Millionaire's daughter collapsed at Café. The waitress did something doctors said was impossible. Every Thursday at exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just as the sun begins to dip behind the harbor skyline, Michael Harrington walks hand in hand with his daughter into Harborview Café. It isn't just a routine, it is a small ritual that offers him the sliver of peace he can still hold on to in a life that his software engineering job seems determined to swallow whole. Michael is a brilliant software architect, but ever since losing his wife 3 years ago, he has become a man who is always busy, always exhausted, and always trying harder than any human being should have to. But on Thursdays, everything slows down. The meetings, the unfinished projects, the endless stream of emails. All fade quietly into the background. Because Thursday is for Lily. Lily Harrington, 8 years old, with soft brown curls and eyes as bright as sunlight dancing on waves. A lively, imaginative little girl who carries a thick sketchbook everywhere she goes. To Lily, Harborview Café is a tiny paradise where she can sit by the window facing the ocean and draw whatever sparks inside her mind. A boat, a seagull, or simply a smiling sun with rosy cheeks. But behind her innocence lies a truth that never leaves Michael's mind. Lily has type 1 diabetes. Her continuous glucose monitor rests on her arm, her insulin pump clips at her waist. Michael has grown used to checking her numbers, used to the occasional warning beeps, used even to the quiet, constant fear that tightens in his chest whenever Lily looks even slightly tired. Today feels just like every other Thursday, or at least that's what Michael believes. He has no idea that within the next hour, his life and Lily's will veer into a direction he could have never predicted. A direction that will bring them face to face with a woman he never would have imagined becoming important to his world. Harborview Café always carried a strange kind of light in the late afternoon, neither too bright nor too dim, as if it belonged to a beautiful memory no one dared touch for fear it might disappear. Sunlight shattered across the ocean outside the window, spilling golden reflections onto the wooden tables, making the place feel both warm and distant. And standing quietly within that soft glow, like a muted yet unmistakable brushstroke, was Sienna Carter. She was wiping down the counter when Michael and Lily walked in. She glanced up for barely a second, but in that second, her deep brown eyes registered countless things. The way Michael held his daughter's hand just a little tighter, the exhaustion weighing down his shoulders, and the feather-light steps of Lily, as if the whole world were nothing more than a blank page waiting to be drawn on. "Hi there," Sienna said softly as she placed their drinks on the table. Her voice had the gentleness of wind passing over the sea, light but undeniably real. Lily brightened instantly, glowing like a tiny lighthouse. "Miss Sienna, today I drew a sailboat. Do you want to see?" "I'd love to." Sienna leaned down, her fingers unconsciously resting on the edge of the table beside Lily's sketchbook, as though she were grounding herself for whatever little story Lily was about to share. In that moment, between the whisper of waves and the faint warmth of freshly brewed coffee, Sienna looked a little closer. And the fragile calm surrounding Lily began to fracture. The girl's skin was slightly pale, her eyes sparkling yet drained, and a thin sheen of sweat clung to her forehead. When Lily lifted her hand to flip the page, Sienna caught the tiny tremor in her wrist, small enough to escape ordinary eyes, yet loud as a siren to someone who used to live by such signs. A glimpse of the glucose monitor flashed beneath Lily's sleeve, a tiny light on the screen, a tiny warning that something wasn't right. Sienna swallowed, feeling an old instinct stir along her spine, sharp and familiar, an instinct she had tried to bury for 2 long years. "Be careful, something's wrong." She could almost hear the voice inside her head. Michael noticed nothing. His attention was glued to the phone, fingers flying over emails that would never wait for him. Lily kept smiling, kept drawing, yet her lips held a faint bluish tinge. Sienna? Lily murmured, her voice softer than usual. Yes, sweetheart? I think I feel a little dizzy. Sienna froze, only for a second, but it was enough for the entire room to change color in her eyes. She lowered herself to Lily's level, placing a steadying hand on the table. Hey, Lily, how about a sip of water? I just want to make sure you're okay. Lily nodded, trying to smile, but the smile wavered like a weak wave pulling back from the shore. Inside Sienna's chest, her heartbeat struck once, sharp, decisive, cracking the calm she had forced around herself for so long. She knew these signs. She had chased them through streets filled with sirens and tears. She had once traded hours of her life for these tiny tremors, trying to save people she'd never met. Now she inhaled deeply, and she looked at Lily again, longer this time, longer than any barista should. Outside the window, the ocean still sparkled as if nothing had shifted. But in Sienna's eyes, something very real was forming, quiet, sharp, and cold as wind over open water. A warning, a knowing, as if she sensed something coming, something she wasn't ready to face, yet couldn't turn away from. And in the very moment Sienna looked at Lily longer than she meant to, the thing she feared most began to surface. Softly at first, but unmistakable, like a crack spreading slowly across glass. Lily's unfinished story, her fragile smile, everything seemed to dim just slightly, shifting the air around them into something no longer as calm as it had been minutes earlier. Lily continued coloring her sailboat, but the small hand that once moved with playful confidence now trembled with uneven, involuntary motions. At first it looked like mere fatigue, but the tremor grew stronger, moving up her wrist. Sienna sensed it instantly, even though Lily tried to hide it by gripping the crayon tighter. Her breathing turned shallow, faster, as if each inhale hit an invisible wall. "Lily, sweetheart, are you okay?" Sienna asked softly, though her tone had sharpened. The girl didn't respond right away. She blinked slowly, as if her eyelids were too heavy to lift. Michael noticed none of it. His phone vibrated again and again until it finally rang. He glanced at the screen, sighed tiredly. "Can you watch her for just a moment? I'll take this call outside." He didn't even wait for her reply before heading out, pressing the phone to his ear as he walked. The cafe door closed behind Michael just as Lily's glucose monitor let out its first faint beep. Thin, almost fragile, but in Sienna's ears, it was a siren. A wire tightened inside her chest. Every instinct she'd buried over 2 years surged back with razor clarity, so sharp she had to inhale to steady her hands. "I feel a little dizzy," Lily whispered. Just then, the crayon slipped from her fingers, rolled across the table, then clattered onto the floor. A tiny sound, but it made Sienna's stomach drop. She reached forward just as the CGM screen lit up beneath Lily's sleeve, the warning tone escalating suddenly, shrill and urgent. The number blinked. 39. Miller, DL. Dangerous. Terrifying. "Lily!" Sienna called softly but urgently, catching the girl's body right as she slumped forward, eyes drifting unfocused. She pulled Lily close, guiding her gently to the floor before she could fall. Several customers cried out. Chairs scraped, a mug shattered somewhere behind her. Someone rushed over to help, while another pointed their phone to record. "Why won't they help?" flickered through Sienna's mind, but the thought vanished as quickly as it came, because all her attention was on Lily. She laid the child flat, cushioning her head with a folded cloth. She checked the girl's skin, cold, clammy, graying. Her pulse raced but felt thin beneath Sienna's fingertips. Lily's breaths were shallow, erratic. "Lily, sweetheart, can you hear me? Look at me, okay?" Sienna kept her voice steady, though tension burned in her eyes. A panicked customer rushed over. "Oh my God, is she passing out? Should I call 911? "Call now," Sienna answered, crisp and decisive. "Tell them, 8-year-old girl, type 1 diabetic, severe hypoglycemia, consciousness decreasing." She slid her fingers beneath Lily's jawline, checking reflexes. Everything was declining rapidly. Lily tried to open her eyes but couldn't. Her small body went limp in Sienna's arms, light in a way that felt terrifying, as if life itself were retreating. The cafe erupted into chaos around them, frightened voices, alarms, footsteps, the relentless beeping from the monitor. Sienna felt her own heartbeat hammering hard against her ribs. Not out of fear, but because this was too familiar, too much like the night that had driven her away from the field. But this time, she would not freeze. Not again. The air inside Harborview Cafe thickened, heavy with Lily's shallow breaths and Sienna's pounding heartbeat. Customers scrambled in chaos, chairs screeching, someone screaming, cups shattering. But to Sienna, the world narrowed down to the child in her arms. Lily's eyelids fluttered weakly, struggling to stay open, as if a tiny flame fought desperately not to be blown out. "Lily, sweetheart, stay with me. Can you hear me?" Sienna whispered, her palm against the girl's cold cheek. The chill of her skin sent a tremor through Sienna's spine. The glucose monitor erupted into piercing alarm, shrill enough to slice through every other sound. The number flashed. 39 millimers DL. Lily's body twitched once, then went limp. The ocean, the sunlight, the smell of coffee, all vanished into a distant haze. Only the fragility of life remained. The cafe door burst open. Michael rushed in, face drained of color. "Lily! Oh, God, Lily!" He fell to his knees beside them, hands trembling uncontrollably. He dug frantically through Lily's medical pouch, yanking out the glucagon kit, but the cap slipped, rolling across the floor. His shaking fingers couldn't hold it steady. "No, no, no, no," Michael gasped, voice cracking as he tried again, failing each time. Sienna reached out, gripping his wrist firmly. "Michael, look at me." His eyes lifted, drowning in fear. "I used to be an EMT," Sienna said, her voice steady and clear. "You need to trust me. Let me help her." Michael froze, then exhaled as if his last bit of strength escaped him. He nodded. Sienna turned toward the counter. "I need honey, a lot, and glucose gel, now." A terrified barista ran back with a handful of packets, practically throwing them into her palms. Sienna knelt beside Lily again, ripping open the glucose tube with her teeth, her voice quick but controlled. "Michael, listen. With her sugar this low, she might not be able to swallow. If we make her drink anything, she could choke. So I'm using buccal absorption. Inside the cheek and gums, it works faster." What do I do?" Michael's voice shook violently. "Hold her head, gently. Keep her airway open." Michael obeyed, though his hands trembled so hard he had to brace them with his forearms. He stroked Lily's hair, whispering through ragged breaths. "Daddy's here. Lily, please look at me." Sienna tore open the first honey packet, scooping a small amount onto her fingertip. Her hands, unlike Michael's, were steady, almost effortlessly so, as though muscle memory had taken over. She gently rubbed the honey inside Lily's cheek, coating the gums. "Come on, sweetheart. You're okay. Stay with me," she murmured, her voice a lifeline. Minutes stretched unbearably. Michael's voice cracked more than once. "Lily, please." Another packet of honey, then another. Sienna checked her pulse, still rapid, but stronger. She looked at the CGM screen, 41, then 45. Lily twitched. A tiny sound escaped her lips. Her eyelids fluttered, weak but alive. "She's responding," Sienna whispered, afraid hope might shatter. Michael choked back a sob, clutching Lily's hand. "Lily, baby, can you hear Daddy?" And then the faint wail of a siren drifted in from the street, growing louder, closer, vibrating through the window. Lily's eyes moved again, just barely. Sienna leaned close. "That's it, Lily. You're doing so well." And in that moment, with the sirens closing in and warmth slowly seeping back beneath the girl's skin, Sienna knew she had pulled Lily back from the edge. And for the first time in 2 years, she didn't feel like a failure. The ambulance siren outside grew louder, threading through the glass like a red line slicing into the chaos inside the cafe. The flashing lights painted trembling streaks of blue and red across Sienna's face, blending past and present so sharply she felt as if her lungs were being held in someone else's fist. Lily's breathing grew softer, while Michael hovered over her, his hand shaking so violently he could barely keep it steady on her hair. "Sweetheart, stay with me." "Daddy's here," he whispered, each word cracking like a wave breaking on jagged rocks. Then the door burst open, and 2 EMTs rushed in, carrying the urgency of the street with them. They knelt beside Lily immediately, their movements swift and efficient, making everything around them slow down in comparison. One of them turned to ask Sienna for details, but the moment he recognized her, his voice faltered. "Carter? No way." Her name dropped into the room like a stone sinking into old memories. Sienna felt her entire body tighten, as though someone had just unlocked a door she had been barring with all her strength for 2 years. There was no avoiding it now. You left the service," the EMT murmured, disbelief clouding his features. Sienna answered before emotion could leak into her voice. "Severe hypoglycemia, low of 39. I used buccal glucose, partial improvement in consciousness, heart rate high but stabilizing." The EMT nodded quickly. "Good job. That was handled perfectly." But the word perfectly cut deeper than any insult, because perfection had once failed her, and she had been carrying the weight of that failure every single day since. They lifted Lily onto the stretcher. Michael followed close beside her, gripping her hand like it was the only rope keeping him from drowning. The ambulance door opened, flooding them in a wash of cold clinical light. As they disappeared inside, the siren wailed again, long, sharp, merciless, echoing straight through Sienna's ribs. Her legs buckled. She caught herself on a table edge, the room tilting not from shock, but from memory, rising like debris in dark water. She saw the highway again, wet, cold, smeared with reflections of broken headlights. No explosions, no dramatic crashes. Just a single sound splitting through the night, a mother's sobbing scream, raw and jagged enough to unhinge the world. She saw herself kneeling beside the crushed car, saw the 7-year-old boy trapped in the back seat, his eyes wide with fear. And she saw herself frozen, not for a minute, for 30 seconds. But 30 seconds felt like a cliff that swallowed everything she had ever relied on. Training, instinct, courage. When she finally moved, when she tore the seatbelt loose and tried to pull him free, the boy was already gone. No breath, no pulse, no second chance. "You promised he'd be okay." That voice, a mother's voice, shattered and pleading, echoed now as vividly as if it were rising from the tiles beneath her feet. Sienna gripped the table harder, her breath fracturing in her chest. A tear fell onto her hand, the same hand that had just saved Lily's life. But the wound inside her whispered the only thing she had ever believed. She was the one who let that little boy die. The ambulance siren faded down the street, leaving behind a strange hollowness in Sienna's chest. As if when those metal doors closed, part of her breath had been sealed inside with them. She stood still for a few seconds, staring at the empty space where the vehicle had disappeared, then slowly released her grip on the table's edge and forced herself to move. Michael had gone with Lily. No one in the cafe called her name anymore. No more phones recording, no more terrified voices. Only the sound of waves beyond the window and the faint stickiness of honey on her fingers. The scent of a life saved just in time. She didn't remember exactly how she got to the hospital. The world on her way there smeared into streaks of color. Traffic lights, signs, horns. Nothing took a clear shape. Only one thought clung to her like a hook. Is Lily okay? At the emergency unit, Sienna stood in the hallway, her hands laced so tightly her knuckles blanched. The treatment room door was shut, and Michael sat slumped against the wall, his face drained by dread. He looked up when he saw her, as if her presence alone had just pulled him 1 inch away from the edge. She hesitated, but Michael pushed himself up. You saved her," he said, voice cracked, trembling with gratitude. "I don't even know how to thank you." Sienna couldn't answer. Her throat tightened with conflicting emotions, relief, fear, and the old wound she couldn't leave behind. A doctor stepped out, peeling off his gloves. "Mr. Harrington?" Michael shot to his feet. "How is she? Is she all right?" The doctor nodded, slow and certain. "She's lucky. Very lucky. She was minutes away from slipping into a deep coma. Whoever performed first aid did exactly what needed to be done." He turned to Sienna, studying her with recognition and respect. "That was you, wasn't it?" Sienna didn't speak. Her heart thudded with a familiar ache, but for the first time in 2 years, within that ache flickered something faint, something like a drop of water breaking through stone. A flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the monster she had believed herself to be. The news that Lily was safe drifted through the air like a soft breath, bringing color back to the world. Yet for Sienna, it didn't lift the heaviness pressing against her chest. After the doctor spoke, after Michael thanked her with eyes full of unspoken weight, Sienna had only been able to nod before quietly stepping away. She returned to her apartment with trembling hands and a heart flickering between relief and the old, suffocating ache. 3 days passed like a thick fog. Sienna went to work, but wasn't really there. Every siren outside, every flash of light on a window pane jarred her whole body, tugging her back toward memories she had spent years trying to bury. On the 3rd day, when she walked into Harborview Café, she expected to slip into routine again, let the rhythm of work numb the hollow ache inside her. But everything shifted when she saw Michael sitting at the corner window table, the one he always shared with Lily. He looked up the second the door chimed, his expression no longer panicked, but deep, steady, and resolute. "Sienna," he stood, voice wavering only slightly. "Could I have 5 minutes? Just 5. Part of her wanted to turn away. Another part, quiet but persistent, moved her forward. She nodded. They sat down together, the late afternoon light spilling over the table in a soft gold wash, as if trying to soothe the wounds neither of them had fully admitted to. Michael spoke first. "I know you saved my daughter," he said gently, "but I could tell. There was something else happening in you that day, like you were fighting more than the emergency itself." The words unlocked something in Sienna. She lowered her eyes, hands clasped so tightly they trembled. Then, for the first time in 2 years, she told everything. The accident, the boy, the 30 seconds of frozen terror, the mother's scream, the guilt that devoured her until she couldn't look at her own reflection, couldn't wear her uniform, couldn't trust her own hands. When she finished, the silence between them grew soft, almost tender. Michael watched her with an expression she'd never seen before, neither pity nor judgment, but a deep, resonant understanding. He drew a slow breath, gathering courage to reveal a wound of his own. "I know that feeling better than you think," he said quietly. "My wife, Emily, she died from diabetes complications. She called me 3 times that day, 3 times saying she didn't feel right." His voice cracked, but he didn't look away. "And I was in a meeting. I thought I could call back later. I thought she'd be fine." He met her gaze head on. But she wasn't fine, and I didn't get there in time. Two people, two heartbreaks, two histories that once had nothing to do with each other, now fit together like fractured pieces, finally finding where they belonged. And for the first time in that quiet moment, Sienna didn't feel alone. The quiet moment between Sienna and Michael had barely settled when the sound of small running footsteps burst into the cafe, changing the atmosphere in an instant. A bright, familiar voice rang out, slicing straight through the heaviness in Sienna's chest. "Miss Sienna!" Before she could turn, a pair of small arms wrapped tightly around her waist. Lily, healthy, glowing, and bright as sunlight on open water, stood there, truly a little beam of light appearing right in the middle of the shadows the adults were still wrestling with. "I missed you so much," Lily beamed, face tilted up. "Daddy said you saved my life, so I'm calling you my hero." Sienna let out a breathy laugh, but the sound trembled, cracking at the edges. "Sweetheart, I just did what I could." "No," Lily shook her head fiercely, curls bouncing. "You are my hero." She squeezed tighter, as if her small arms could somehow patch every crack inside Sienna. Michael walked over, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "She insisted on coming to see you first," he said, voice lighter than it had been in days. Lily loosened her hug only to grab Sienna's hands. "Next week is my birthday. The doctors said I can have a little party at the hospital to help raise money for other kids. I want you to come. Actually, I need you to come." The invitation hit Sienna like a warm gust of wind she didn't know she needed. I would be honored," she whispered. Michael hesitated for just a moment, then exhaled as if bracing for something difficult but necessary. "Sienna, there's someone else I want you to meet, someone I think you should talk to." She frowned slightly, confused, until he reached into his jacket and placed a white envelope gently on the table. "I asked the hospital to request the file. This is the accident report from 2 years ago." The air between them tightened. Sienna's fingertips trembled when they touched the envelope. It took her several seconds to gather the courage to open it. The pages inside were crisp, emotionless, nothing like the storm she had carried inside herself for so long. Michael's voice was soft, careful. "I think it's time you knew the truth." She read, slowly at first, then faster, her breath uneven. The child died at the moment of impact. Severe internal trauma, no possible life-saving intervention, even with immediate medical staff present. No fault attributable to first responders. The words didn't cut. They lifted. They freed. They cleansed a wound that had been left open for 2 years. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that can't." "Sienna." Michael's hand enveloped hers, solid, unwavering. "You didn't fail him. No one could have saved that boy." A sob broke from her throat, then another, and then the dam shattered entirely. She pressed a hand to her mouth, but the tears came unstoppable, years of guilt pouring out at once. Lily stepped forward, hugging her tightly without needing to understand everything. "It's okay, Miss Sienna. It's okay." Michael stood beside them, eyes bright as well, not from pain, but from witnessing someone finally being released from a burden too heavy to carry alone. And in that moment, held by Lily's small arms and the truth finally brought into the light, Sienna felt something she hadn't dared to feel in years. She felt forgiven. The following week, the children's hospital looked brighter than usual. Purple ribbons swayed softly in the cool air. Balloons floated above the room like drifting clouds, and children's laughter echoed down the hallways like a tide of warm light. Sienna stood at the entrance of the event hall, her dress neatly pressed, but her hands cold and unsteady. She had saved Lily. She knew that. But stepping into a place filled with celebration and gratitude still made her feel like she was standing somewhere she didn't quite belong. Before she could retreat, the doors burst open and Lily ran out, her purple dress spinning around her legs, her cheeks rosy and alive. She threw her arms around Sienna with surprising force. "Miss Sienna, you came! I waited for you!" Without allowing a second of hesitation, Lily grabbed her hand and pulled her into the hall, where warm golden lights washed over everything like gentle sunshine. People turned to look at Sienna with curiosity and respect, but none of it frightened her. Not today. Michael stepped onto the small stage at the center, smiling when he saw her. "Today isn't just Lily's birthday," he said, voice steady. "It's also a chance for me to thank the person who brought my daughter back to me." His gaze met hers. That person is Sienna Carter. Applause rose, sincere and grounding. Sienna felt the room tilt just slightly beneath her feet. A doctor stepped forward. The buccal glucose technique she used is difficult, requiring razor-sharp judgment. Not many EMTs can execute it so precisely. Sienna lowered her head, her chest tightening with an emotion she hadn't dared to feel. Then Dr. Helena Park, Director of Pediatric Emergency Medicine, approached. She looked at Sienna as though she recognized a colleague who had been lost too long. "We reviewed everything, and we would like to offer you a full scholarship for EMT recertification." A murmur spread through the crowd. Dr. Park continued, "And when you finish, if you choose to return, we will reserve a place for you on the Pediatric Emergency Response Team." The world seemed to soften around Sienna, the warm lights flickering gently as her heart thudded in her chest. A small hand tightened around hers. Lily's. "Say yes," Lily whispered, eyes gleaming. "You can save more kids like me." Sienna looked at Michael, then Lily, then at her reflection in the glass beside them. And she smiled, a real smile she hadn't felt in years. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling but sure. "I accept." 6 months had passed since that birthday party, and summer brought warm evenings that filled the seaside park with families and laughter. Under the soft golden light, children's voices rose like the gentle soundtrack of the city. Sienna, wearing her crisp EMT uniform, was walking past the playground after a shift when she heard a sharp scream from a young girl. The child lay curled beneath the slide, breathing rapidly, lips turning pale. A frantic mother cried, "She's allergic! Cashews! Oh God, where's the EpiPen?" Parents froze. Kids stopped playing. Panic rippled through the air. But in that moment, everything slowed for Sienna, like the world was stepping aside and handing her the reins. "Give me the EpiPen!" Her voice didn't waver, didn't rush. It held a confidence she once feared she would never regain. She checked the airway, positioned the girl safely, and delivered the epinephrine shot in one precise motion. Within seconds, the child's breathing steadied, her eyes fluttering open. The mother collapsed into tears of relief. Sienna placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "She's going to be okay. Let's get her to the hospital for monitoring." When the ambulance arrived, the mother wrapped her arms around Sienna, whispering, "Thank you. You saved my baby." This time, Sienna didn't shrink away from gratitude. She simply nodded and said softly, "It's my job." That evening, she stopped by Harborview Café, where the warm lights shimmered on the windows like memories still lingering in the air. The moment she stepped inside, Lily squealed as if a superhero had just walked in. "Miss Sienna, your uniform is so cool." The girl ran over and pressed a new drawing into her hands. 3 figures holding hands beneath a bright sun. 1 man, 1 woman in an EMT uniform, and a little girl with a big heart drawn on her chest. "This is my chosen family," Lily said proudly. Sienna looked toward Michael near the counter. He lifted his eyes at the exact moment she sought him. No words were needed. In that exchange, warm, steady, filled with something deeper than gratitude, a truth settled gently between them. They had become a family, not through blood, but through choosing one another in their darkest days. From that evening at Harborview Café, Sienna's life changed in ways she couldn't immediately describe. It wasn't loud or sudden, only a series of small, gentle shifts. Michael stopping by each morning with a warm cup of tea before her shift. Lily running into her arms as though it was the most natural place to be. And the quiet evenings when the three of them walked along the shore, letting the ocean speak for them in its endless whisper. At first, Sienna thought it was simply a bond formed by shared wounds. But day after day, she found herself waiting to hear Michael's knock on her door, waiting for Lily's bright-eyed smile, filled with unconditional trust. And Michael, he listened deeply, stood by her steadily, offered her a kind of safety she once thought she no longer deserved. A year passed, and then another. They never labeled what they were. They simply lived it, naturally, like the tide returning to shore. Lily was the first to name it, quietly, during a night of drawing beside Sienna. "I think we're kind of like a family already." Sienna laughed softly, though her heart melted like warm sand beneath her feet. And Michael, always cautious with emotions, looked at them as if the universe had finally returned what he had lost. So, on a golden evening when the sun dipped low and waves glowed amber, Michael decided it was time to put into words what he had carried in his heart for 2 years. Lily walked ahead, carrying a small basket, barely able to hide her excitement. When they reached the beach, their beach, Sienna froze. Lanterns lined the path, glowing gently in the breeze. Seashells formed a heart in the sand, glimmering beneath the fading sunlight. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Lily tugged her hand. "Daddy and I made it. Do you like it?" Before she could answer, Michael stepped closer, his face soft in the orange glow. He took her hands, holding them tenderly. "Sienna?" His voice was low, steady. "You came into our lives when I believed I would never heal again. You healed Lily, and you healed me in ways I never imagined possible." The wind lifted her hair, and her eyes shimmered with emotion. Then Michael took a breath, lowered himself to one knee, and opened a small velvet box. The ring caught the last reflection of the sun. "I love you, Sienna, not because of the past, not to fill an empty space, but because you are the present I want and the future I choose. Will you marry me?" The world went still. Lily stepped beside him, whispering, "Please say yes, so you can be my mom." The words shattered the final piece of fear inside Sienna. Tears streamed down her cheeks, tears not of guilt, but of deep, overwhelming gratitude. She nodded. "Yes, I will." Michael laughed through his own tears, and Lily hugged them both, her little arms binding them together like a ribbon of sunlight. The ocean waves kissed the shore as if applauding their moment. The wedding took place months later, right on the same beach. The sky was silk blue, the breeze carried the scent of salt and white flowers, and rows of guests, EMT colleagues, cafe friends, and loved ones, gathered on the sand. Lily was a glowing flower girl, scattering petals across the aisle. Michael looked into Sienna's eyes as he spoke his vows. "I promise to love you with everything I have and to always honor the memory of Emily, who was once a part of my story. But today, Sienna, I choose you. I choose our new family." Sienna squeezed his hands, her voice trembling but clear. "I promise to love Lily as my own, to stand by you through every storm, and to build a home where all three of us can finally be whole." When the rings were exchanged, the waves rolled gently against the sand, blessing them with their quiet rhythm. Their kiss was met with cheers, and Lily shouting joyfully, "Mom and Dad are married." And just like that, their new family, chosen by love rather than blood, began its first beautiful chapter.